Guys, this is going to be a very difficult comparison because we are comparing two really, really good and iconic American cars. Now, I did buy this GT350 about 2 weeks ago at this point, and it has been such an incredible car. This thing is actually so enjoyable to drive that I get genuine withdrawals if I do not drive this thing every at least 24 hours. It is incredible. We'll save that for when we're actually behind the wheel though. Let's talk about the looks for a second. Now, let me know what you guys think about this color. This was kind of a controversial, bold color to get, but at the end of the day, I think it fits this car very, very nicely. I mean, black and yellow doesn't go well with every car, but it is a Shelby. It's a rarer color, and so I thought it just made sense, especially with the paint matched badges. If you did already watch my GT500 versus C7 Z06 video, you know the answer. I'm gonna say the C7 Z06 does look better than the GT350. I bought the 350 and I think it looks absolutely beautiful, but this is just too good looking. All of the vents and the angles, and oh, it's just so perfect. It's like not over the top, but it really is just enough. It is, oh, I can look at this thing literally all day. This is basically an R. It has the R front splitter. It has the same springs that the GT350R has. It has the resonator delete and the X pipe in the back, just like an R, and it has the rear seat delete, just like an R, with the Recaros. So we're gonna pretty much be getting the GT350R experience here. Not entirely, but I know some of you guys are gonna be like, no, it's not, no, it's not. It almost is, okay? And I think it's a better discussion to compare the R to the C7 Z06 because then we're talking about two cars on the same price level. And that's what makes it a little bit more complicated. All right, so, oh man, oh my gosh. 5.2 liter flat plane crank V8, obviously paired with a manual transmission because these don't come in automatics, any of them. This is such a unique car because of what it is. I mean, first of all, rarely do you find manuals anymore. And second of all, rarely do you find V8s anymore. And third of all, rarely do you find flat plane crank V8s. Because it's a flat plane crank V8, it's an ultra high revving V8. 8,250 RPM redline in this thing. And sure, it's nowhere near as fast as the C7 Z06 because it makes 526 horsepower. And torque, I believe, is in the low 4s. I'll pop it up on the screen. But yeah, wait till you hear the C7 Z06 numbers and how that thing accelerates. But it's not always about just acceleration. It's about the feel, the experience, the emotion that you get from driving the car. And so that's going to be where this thing really makes this discussion a lot more difficult because it is so special. And it just offers one of the most unique driving experiences in the automotive world. So under here is the LT4 6.2 liter supercharged V8 making 650 horsepower and 650 pound-feet of torque. That's the heart of the C7 Z06. Yes, this thing offers a very different acceleration experience over the GT350. Trust me when I say that. I mean, you're working with about 200 more pound-feet of torque than the 350. Obviously, that's thanks to this having a supercharger and the 350 being naturally aspirated, but this is not a flat plane crank naturally aspirated V8. That's what I mean. It's a hard conversation to have because they're both so good, but in their own unique way. Yes, this makes a lot more horsepower and a lot more torque, but it doesn't rev as high as the 350. It doesn't sound like the 350. It's not a flat plane crank, which is such a rare find in today's car world. All right, let's go ahead and hop in here. Now, first things first, well, the interiors are going to be very different on the two cars. I do love the Shelby though. You get that nice animation, actually three snakes, one here, one there, one down there. My feet are covering the fourth one, which is on my floor mat as well. But man, the black center marker, the Alcantara feels so unbelievably good in your hands. The very unique red line in this car of 8,250 RPM. It just went away, so let's start it up. Of course, you have the little shift indicator heads-up display as well. The Z06 also does have a shift indicator display. You're gonna have 2 gauges here, oil pressure and oil temp, a screen that is virtually identical to what's in the C7 Z06. Nonetheless, so I mean, it's a very American layout. Like, some of the materials in here, yeah, there's plastic. It's not like that nice, but the places where you want it to be nice are nice. The RPM gauge, the steering wheel, the gauges that indicate the information you really want to know before you start driving like crazy if you care about your car. And of course, this beautiful 6-speed manual transmission. It is such a good transmission. We'll talk about the automatic and the manual in the C7 Z06, but you can't even get a an automatic in the GT350, which just speaks to really how special this car is. All right, so we're pretty much warmed up here. Again, I love how that oil temp gauge is right there. Let's throw this thing over into sports. That's going to open up the exhaust valves, and the C7 Z06 also has active exhaust valves. Guys, you're going to see a lot of similarities between these two cars, despite how different they really are. But what's not similar is this right here. Oh my gosh. I ended up buying a radar detector because, well, I'm gonna need that owning this car. But yes, this thing is not insanely fast. Now, to the average person, absolutely it's insanely fast. But as you guys know, we've driven so many cars on this channel at this point. To me, this is not insanely fast. The C7 Z06, it's a bit of a different story, and you'll see as soon as we hop in that car, you know, what I have to say about that thing. But it's the fact that it just keeps pulling and pulling and pulling. And if you have not driven a high revving car like this, you'll have to fight the urge to not shift. It takes a while to get used to, oh, hey, we still got 3,000 more to go before we actually shift this thing. And that's what I mean. It creates such a special experience. You just don't get this in cars ever anymore. Even in the past, I mean, it's just such a rare find to have this combination. Flat plane crank, 8,250 RPM manual transmission. I mean, wow. Okay, one really nice thing about the interior of this car that the C7 Z06 does not have is the accessibility to the drive modes. If you want to adjust your dampers, you just press this button. If you want to adjust the steering feel, you just press this button. If you want to adjust the actual entire drive modes in one button, so that's going to be dampers, dampers, steering wheel, and exhaust valves, then you just select this little mode button right here. And then exhaust valves are going to be down here. You also have launch control right there as well. In the C7 Z06, you do have a little dial down here to change your drive mode, as you'll see, but to actually individually configure stuff, it's all inside of the electronics. There's no quick access button to individually configure any of your drive modes. And so, oh, we got traction off. Let's not do that for now. It is really nice having just those buttons right there, ready to go, change it up real quick inside of the GT350. So that's a huge plus with this car. Oh, we got a nice little Mustang right there. Honestly, it's starting to piss me off, guys. Mustang owners never wave to each other. Corvette owners always wave to each other. I hate that. I have waved to the past like 8 Mustang owners and no one has waved back at me. If you own a Mustang, please freaking wave at people. Like, oh my gosh. Corvette owners are just, they're just better. I will admit that. They are way better. And speaking of Corvettes, look at that thing. I believe that's a Stingray. They were staring at me. I love to see that. but that could be a cop. But the radar detector would tell me if it is. I don't believe that was. All right, let's do a little pull right here. Ready? Revving it all the way out to 8,000 is just a surreal experience. Again, this car is so much more like engagement and emotion focused than the C7 Z06. Now that car produces emotions, trust me, but this thing is just such a special car. It is unbelievable. Now I want to kind of set the standard with this car. Is it fast? Yeah, it's fast. You realize after you spend some time with this thing that there absolutely could be more power to be had after you spend some time with this. Is the transmission great? Absolutely. And having the manual really brings it all together. Does it sound good? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I'll wait to decipher which one sounds better once we're in the Z06. Is the interior nice? Yeah, but it could be more special. Other than the snakes and the Alcantara and the 8,250 RPM gauge, there's really not a whole lot of cool stuff in this interior. The C7 Z06 does have a bit of a different story to tell on that side. Can it corner well? Yes, it can. This is literally a track car, but the C7 Z06 weighs around 250 pounds less than this. The C7 Z06 has a significantly better 0 to 60 time. The C7 Z06 is a way better quarter mile time. It's so much give and take depending on which route you take. But with that being said, let's hop into the C7 Z06 side of things, take a look at that car, and just see how it really compares to this. Because, well, I want to know what your thoughts are by the end of this video. Which car would you take, given comparing the R to the C7 Z06, because those are on the same price point? I cannot wait to see what you guys have to say in the comments. But first, let's jump into the C7 Z06. Alright, you guys, now we're behind the wheel of the C7 Corvette Z06, and this is going to be really hard to decide which car I would rather have. There's going to be a lot to compare the two cars to, and first, I do want to start with the cornering, because the GT350 is a track car, and the C7 Z06 is also a track car. Mind you, the C7 Z06 is about 250 to 300 pounds lighter than the GT350. And right off the bat, I will say before we even jump into the corners that you do feel that weight difference. All right, let's see how it feels. I do need to warm up the engine just a bit more, so we'll throw it into the corners, but we're not going to floor it just yet. You know, right off the bat, I think the GT350, when the whole car is in sport mode, actually, let's put this in track. The steering feels a bit heavier in the GT350. Yeah, track mode does definitely tighten this up a little bit. That's probably on par with the GT350. You know, one thing about the 350 is when you are cornering that thing, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, oh, I'm in a Mustang. Like, I gotta be careful. This may not go as well as I want it to, but it goes way better than you think. And so it kind of exceeds expectations. Meanwhile, this car, you look at the thing and you realize, okay, this car should be capable of a lot, and it is. Now, the ride height on the C7 Z06 is about 3 or 4 inches higher than what's on my GT350. Mine has the R springs. My whole car is pretty much converted into a GT350R. So at the end of the day, this is kind of more of an R versus a C7 Z06 comparison, which, and if you ask me, it makes it a lot more fair, because now we're talking about two cars on the same price point. But to really sum up the whole cornering side of things, the C7 Z06 kind of corners as well as you think it would. The GT350R corners a lot better than you think it would. Pushing these two to the limits, which I have on my own time as well. I know in this video we're not really on roads to go full on in the corners, but I'll say from experience that these are right around on the same level. I will be doing a true test at the tail of the Dragon in Tennessee in a couple of months here, comparing the C7 Z06 to the GT350, but just from personal experience taking the two on corners, they are very, very comparable cars. Just because the GT350 is 250-ish pounds heavier than this car, yet corners as well as it does, I want to give it to the 350, but that's a little bit biased because that's, you know, the car that I just recently bought. So, you know, I'm gonna have to say these two are tied. But you know where they're not tied? Well, downshift, 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 downshift. I mean, that wasn't even close to the red line, and it is still that insanely fast. Going from the GT350 and hopping in the C7 Z06, these are two very different levels of acceleration. The GT350, for most people, that is, by the way, like more than what you would ever need. But this car, it just reinvents the wheel of what's possible. You could go from a Lamborghini Huracan into the C7 Z06, and when you do a hard, oh, there's a cop right there. When you do a hard pull in this car, you will still have a massive smile on your face and borderline question if this car is faster than the Lamborghini Huracan. And to answer that question, by the way, it is. There's videos of the C7 Z06 beating Huracans in roll races for $70,000 to $80,000 if you're looking at a really good condition one. By the way, to address the elephant in the room, yes, this is the automatic. So you're probably upset by that because the GT350 is obviously, you can only get it in a manual. If you guys have watched the channel, you know I've driven a manual C7 Z06 about, 10-15 times. And so they are right around on the same level. By the way, the clutch in the C7 Z06 manual version, the clutch tends to go a bit quicker than you'd expect it to. So that's a downfall about getting the C7 Z06 in manual. But the shifter feels about just as good as it does in the GT350. They're both very tight and they're so engaging to drive. But hey, if you're just trying to really go in a straight line as fast as you can, I don't blame you for getting the automatic. In fact, that is why me and my brother got the automatic, just because it's more daily driver friendly and it allows you to do this. Oh my gosh! We were floating there for a second. Oh my gosh. And the sound that this thing makes, which leads us on to the next comparison. That sound is so different than the GT350. It is really hard to decide what's the better sounding car. You know, you comment below. I almost don't want to say, again, I'm a bit biased here. I want to say GT350 because look at the difference in the red line. This thing is limited to 6,500 RPM. And the GT350 has 8,250. Mine does have the resonator delete in the X pipe, so it gives it a bit of a different sound over just a base GT350. That's what a 350R would sound like. So the pops and the bangs out of that car are way better than this car. I do like myself a naturally aspirated V8 more than a turbo or a supercharger. I just like the speed and the acceleration of a turbo and a supercharger more. But when it comes to sound, it is really difficult to be a naturally aspirated V8 and a flat plane crank one at that. So I am going to give it to the GT350. They are so close, they both sound so good. But can you argue with that? 8,250 RPM flat plane crank V8. I don't think so. So yeah, I'm gonna say sound is gonna go to the GT350. Now, as for the interior presentation, This is tough. They both pretty much have an identical infotainment screen. This one does have a digital layout, at least for the center screen inside of the gauge cluster. This one does have a fully cockpit-like design, all facing towards the driver. So, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, this does feel a lot more cool than the GT350. The 350 does have a full Alcantara steering wheel. In this example of the Z06, this does not. So the steering wheel and that Shelby badge I do like a lot more than the Z06, but just the overall layout, I'm gonna have to give it to the C7 Z06. They both have drive mode selectors, of course. They both have active exhaust, adjustable suspension, adjustable steering wheel. They are right on par with the adjustable settings that each car has. So, but just because of how cool and fighter jet-like the C7 Z06 feels, that's the thing that kind of tips the seesaw and makes me say the C7 Z06 is a better interior design over the GT350. Reliability wise, I'm gonna say right off the bat, as long as you fix the wheel cracking issues on the C7 Z06, if you guys haven't seen Social Orbit's channel, we watch each other's videos. He's doing, oh man, he is blowing up on YouTube. But his wheels cracked on a C7 Z06 at like 60 miles an hour. He could have died. That is a serious, serious problem. Guys, if you get a C7 Z06, do not take that lightly. Fix that wheel cracking issue. Otherwise, your life is in danger if you do not fix that. But assuming that's fixed, the C7 Z06 does take the cake for reliability. Reason being is because the GT350, too many of them have serious oil consumption issues. A lot of them have transmission issues, although, well, the clutch in the C7 Z06 does go. Seems like the manual versions of the transmissions are kind of on par. But the automatics inside of the C7 Z06 are basically bulletproof. You should not have any issues if you do get an automatic C7 Z06, other than overheating. But odds are you're not going to run into those issues unless you're living in some super, super hot state. Hey, that looks identical to the EcoBoost that I used to own, the red one. But reliability, yeah. Overall, I'm going to say C7 Z06. It is close, but guys, I have multiple complaints about my my GT350 already. That's going to be for a separate video, but the oil consumption is really, really bad at just 7,000 miles. Why? Are you kidding me? 7,000 miles and it's already drinking a quart of oil every 200 or 300 miles? That is ridiculous. You should not have any issue like that in the C7 Z06. The wheel cracking thing is bad, but at least that's not the motor we're talking about. So, that's the only, again, that's gonna just teeter that seesaw towards the C7 Z06 taking the win or the dub in reliability. But all in all, let me know which car you guys would choose. Again, I want to say the R here because we drove an R. So GT350R or C7 Z06, and let's assume we're talking about the manual transmission C7 Z06 here as well, because I think that's really, well, that's the fair comparison. Yeah, like I said, I drove the C7 Z06 manual multiple times, and it's as good of a transmission as the GT350 in my opinion. It does have rev match though, and the GT350 does not. That's a tough debate. You know, I like myself some rev match, but at the same time, the raw feeling of no rev match is awesome as well. So that's a wrap, guys. I appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you very, very soon in the next video. Peace out.